Alright, I've got a question for you. Do you collect something that needs organisation?
No. Well, yes.
For me, it's not quite a collection, but I do have like lots of notebooks for different things. Photography notes, woodwork, it's a general notepad, drawing ideas for woodwork, and then this one I use for when I'm editing the videos. Instead of having them lying all over the place, I'm going to make a little holder for them. Now I did make one about 4 years ago, and I'll put a picture on screen now. And as you can see, I mean, it's done the job well, but it needs updating. I've still got some sapele, which I've got thickness down to about 16mm, and I've still got some maple. Oh, this is supposed to be a nice simple build, right? But if you've watched any of my videos, you'll know that on a whole, I can't do any build simply. I always have to, well, mess things up, and trust me, you'll see me do just that throughout the video. I remembered from the organiser build that I needed to make sure I had a straight edge, so therefore I made sure that I did it for this build. The jig that I'm using is so simple to use, but I can't really use it for long pieces, so it is good for medium to small boards. This Evolution table saw, when I first got it, I loved it. Now, after using it quite a lot, I really wish that I had gone for one that was a bit more expensive and maybe slightly smaller and a different brand, as this one is just a bit bigger than a job site saw, therefore it does take up more room, but more on this subject later on. At this point I'm just marking out and cutting the different parts of the main frame. First it's the base and the back, then the two sides. Then it's moving on to marking out where I'm going to cut the miters. Just using a bit of scrap of sapele to do that. I'm curious, would you use miters on this sort of a build, or would you do something different? Let me know in the comments. The grooves for the dividers have been marked out and now I'm routing them out. Again, as with the organiser video, I do use different methods for the routing, but I did buy a smaller router plane bit for the Veritas router plane. It's a 6mm or 1/4 of an inch for all of the Imperialists. That was take 3. As it turns out, this is the first time in this build where I do all of this. I also have to do it later on in order to correct some mistakes, or you could say to tidy it all up. Yeah, that's how I put it, just to tidy it all up. Naturally, this is the other routing method, the palm router, but this time I made sure I used a bush guide so that the router didn't go out of control. Also, using the palm router did do the bulk of the work, but I still went back to the router plane afterwards to finish it off. I figured that this was the best way to transfer the markings onto the back piece. Just line up the two and then use a marking knife for an accurate transfer. What you can see here is I've finally got the grooves done on the base and the back. They're not perfect. You'll have seen the different methods I use, from using the router plane to the palm router and then chiseling down the edges. But also what I've done is I've marked out where I'm going to be starting off on miter cuts. And I started off using the miter saw itself, and back to the subject of the table saw. I would have preferred to do all the miter cuts on the table saw, but I discovered that it no longer likes to do 45 degrees. But I'll put a little clip in which I recorded for a short that shows it doesn't get close to it. And onto the other machine that I used for the miters, the bandsaw, and this was actually due to the miter saw not being able to handle the length of the back and the bases. As a side note, I might actually use a bandsaw to do these type of miters in the future. I mean, I certainly can't use a friggin' Evolution table saw, can I? So this is what would become the first time that I had to reduce the height of the sides. Keep watching to find out why. Disaster after disaster. I was going to start to rip the dividers out of the maple. I got the maple cut down to a square block of 160 by 160, and then I thought, oh wait a minute, what's the maximum depth that my bandsaw cuts? It's 135mm. So what I'm going to have to do is trim down the maple down to 135mm, that remain in piece, at 9mm thicknesses. You can see that the dividers don't fully fit, or at the moment look good. So it's a case of back to cleaning up the grooves by chiseling them, and then I do use the router plane again just to make sure it's all nice and smooth. Now that I've finally got the dividers sorted out, I need to trim the back and sides down to the same height as the dividers so it all looks neater. Sanding time is here again. I'll just go through 80 grit and then 120 grit and leave it at that. Stage 1 of the glue up is I just concentrate on the frame. The dividers will go in later. I do use two different frame clamps, one of which is a basic one that you can get from almost anywhere, and the other one is Matt Esley's frame system. I knew there were going to be parts of the frame that I would need to trim up and attempt to make look better. So first I just used my new block plane, and then I have some superior sawdust mixed in with the glue to fill any gaps. So this is the second stage of glue up, as mentioned earlier, the dividers. I didn't actually put any glue on the actual dividers though, just into the grooves. Now we move on to my attempt to cover up the view the dividers show at the top of the back piece. Of course there was only one way that I could cut out this extra bit, and it certainly wasn't on the table saw. Then in order to sand down the final shape, I have this jig for my belt sander to keep it in place. The belt sander cost about 35 quid quite a few years ago. Today's price is £50. Then the jig was just scraps put together. It amazes me that some people spend hundreds of pounds on a specific bench top belt and disc sander, whereas this does the job just as well. Obviously this would be difficult to clamp with equal pressure, so I've just used painter's tape and hoped that it would be sufficient, and it was. Finally, I've got this notebook holder finished, even with all the trials and tribulations that I came across when making. Now I know I've made it for notebooks, but you could have it for anything else. Maybe you receive a lot of post and you want to put your mail in there, especially if you've maybe got some demand for payments. You know, if you've made it this far and have enjoyed the video, then why not click on that like button, and also consider subscribing to the channel for more future content such as this and more scrap builds. And until the next time, Gang Canyon Man.